Welcome to ooLango, the best minutes of your day with Bill and Krista. My name is Krista. I'm an English instructor, and I am also the tour guide of an English immersion trip that we're going to be doing coming up here. Stay tuned for details. And I'm here with Bill. Bill, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, Krista. Thank you. I am also an English as a second language instructor, and I write a newsletter, a weekly newsletter as well, called Winning English, which you can find at winningenglish.substack.com. But of course, weekly as well, Krista and I put our heads together and help you sort through slang words, idioms, sayings that you find in the English language. So today, Krista, what's our focus?
Well, we're going to be talking about the Greek influence on typical phrases that you hear in English. So the first one that we're going to talk about is between a rock and a hard place. This is the dilemma of having to choose between two evils. You are stuck, right? You rock between a rock and a hard place. There's not much room between them. So you don't have really much wiggle room, and you've got to pick between one evil or the other evil. You're in a bad situation. And this actually came from Homer's Odyssey, where the hero Odysseus must pass between two sea monsters. And so he chooses the lesser of the threats, the sea monster that is the least dangerous. So he was between a rock and a hard place. So Bill, do you have any examples of being between a rock and a hard place?
Oh boy, just about every day in life, right? When think of any time where you've had two things, neither of which you wanted to do, right? But you had to make a choice. So on the one case, it was the rock, and the other place, it was the hard place, and you somehow were just stuck in between, and you had no good choices. You know, I can't think of a specific example right now, but boy, I think you could just read the news or think about how your day went, and you would realize a time where you had no good choices at all.
Between a rock and a hard place, like I think of plans, like things that I'm going to do during the day, and I'm squeezed sometimes in my choices of what I can do. So I'm in between the rock and a hard place. Right now, I'm actually having some guys do some work on my yard, and I'm kind of between a rock and a hard place because the yard really needed it, but yet it was going to be a little bit expensive. So both of those, are not the greatest situation. I was between a rock and a hard place, and I decided, yeah, I better go ahead and have the yard taken care of. So that is my example of between a rock and a hard place. And Bill, you have another one. That Achilles heel. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. So this is another saying that's common in English that comes from Greek mythology. Most of these come from Greek mythology. Mythology are just the stories told in the olden days of ancient Greece, stories of heroes and monsters and all these things that take on a symbolic meaning and that we use in the English language. And Achilles heel is another one. So Achilles was a hero of the Trojan War. The Greeks wanted to destroy the Trojans. Achilles was a very powerful hero. When he was a small baby, his mother wanted to make him immortal, invulnerable, couldn't be hurt. So she dipped him in a magic river to make his skin invulnerable. But of course, she couldn't touch the river for reasons that I don't get, but she couldn't touch the river. So she held onto his little ankle and pulled him back out. So which part was still vulnerable? his little ankle, his little heel, right? The heel is the back of your foot. It's kind of like this part, right? So if you have an Achilles heel, you might be very powerful. You might be very strong, but you have this one little spot where you are vulnerable and somebody could easily take you down. And sadly for Achilles, that's what happened. A guy shot him with an arrow right in his heel and took out Achilles. Bad news. But Krista, do you have an example of an Achilles heel?
Well, I think of a father who has a daughter, and the daughter just, you know, is his pride and joy, and he loves his daughter very much. Well, you could say that his daughter is his Achilles heel because he would do anything for his daughter. So he's got a real soft spot for her. And if she wants something, she's got him twisted around her finger, which means that he'll do anything for her. So you could say that in this instance, his daughter was his Achilles heel.
And I have an example from sports. I'm an avid tennis player, and of course, Wimbledon is being played right now as we record this. Um, in tennis, you serve the ball. That's how you start. I read a news article where somebody said, "Oh, he's a really good tennis player, but his serve is his Achilles heel." So, in other words, when he's serving, he's vulnerable. You can beat him, but you better do it then because the rest of the time you're going to lose. So
Mhm.
that was his Achilles heel. And one other quick thing I'll mention is the Achilles tendon. If you kind of reach down on your leg, there's like this big tendon that goes from the muscle on the lower part of your leg to your heel. Even a body part has gotten named after Achilles, the Achilles tendon. So this one seems to show up everywhere.
Very popular. Another popular one is sour grapes. So, what does it mean when somebody has sour grapes? Well, it means that it's used to be by people who didn't get what they wanted to get. And they're kind of like, well, that's all right. Was probably a bad thing anyway. And they've got, you could say, sour grapes because they wanted something very badly. They were a little bit jealous that they didn't get it. So they have sour grapes. And this comes from Aesop's fable, The Fox and the Grapes, where the fox spots some juicy grapes and jumps and unable to get those grapes, he walks away and says, "Oh, I can't reach those grapes. I give up. They were probably sour anyway." So he had sour grapes, and that is the origin of this phrase. Bill, can you think of some sour grapes examples?
Yeah, that sounds. I can really hear that. This sounds like something kids might do, for example, right? So, suppose you are window shopping with your small child. Window shopping is when you're just looking through the windows in a store, not going in. And the child says, like, "Oh, I really, really, really want that toy. I really want the toy. That's the best toy ever." And you say, "No, no, we're not going in. We can't afford it. We're not buying it now." And the child walks away saying, "Well, I guess it was just a lousy toy anyway." You could say, "Oh, that's just sour grapes. It's a fine toy." I suppose if
Hmm.
you wanted to make life even harder for your child, you might do that. Do you have another example, or should I go on to the next one?
I do have another example because I'm thinking about last episode when I was talking about my friend who was always traveling and how she's telling me about these great trips she's going, and I'm feeling kind of jealous about it. But I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm not going to have sour grapes over this. I'm going to let it go and, be happy for her and, celebrate in her enjoyment of those trips rather than having sour grapes about it, rather than being jealous and upset and wanting to have something that I can't have right now. So yeah, that's my example of sour grapes. And
That's a great example, Krista, and I applaud your strength of character for letting go of your sour grapes.
and to let it go. And now she sends me pictures of where she's going, and I'm genuinely happy for her. Whereas before I was
Good.
kind of like, so.
See, I would still have sour grapes.
Uh,
All right, turning to another one here. I'm going back to the Trojan War again. Apparently, this is what interested me. So, the Trojan War, again, was between the Greeks and the people of Troy. Troy, the city, becomes Trojan. Now, the Greeks worked for 10 years to defeat Troy. And so they're like, we've got to do something different. So they pretended that they were giving up. They all sailed away. But before they sailed away, they built this giant, fancy wooden horse as like a we're sorry gift, I guess. Like I said, they all left. They left this Trojan horse. The Trojans came out and said, what is this thing? And they wheeled it inside the city. And at night, all of the Greeks were hiding in it. And the Greeks came out of this wooden horse. And of course, they defeated the Trojans in the end. So, what does this mean? A Trojan horse is something that looks nice, looks like a gift, but is actually dangerous. And I can give you a concrete example. This has come to be used in certain kinds of email scams. Sometimes you get an email. This email looks friendly. Maybe it's offering you some sort of gift, something like that. But if you click on that link in the email, it will cause trouble. It's a Trojan horse. Looks good, very bad. So that's my next example.
Yeah, that's a good one, Bill. The Trojan viruses that we have. Don't click that link. Don't do it.
Even
it's a
if it's a
Trojan horse.
Nigerian prince. Yeah.
Who is enticing you, right? Oh my gosh,
That's
yes.
right.
Trojan
That's one of the
horse.
oldest Trojan horses in
Looks
email
good.
history is a Nigerian prince says he needs to transfer money. Just give me your banking details and I'll give you 10%. Don't do it.
Don't do it. It's a
It's a
Trojan horse. Yeah.
Right.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, the next example is of the Midas touch. So when we talk about somebody who has the Midas touch, we're saying somebody who has good luck in financial affairs. So somebody has the Midas touch if they are constantly making investments that are turning out profitable for them, or they are an entrepreneur and they have a number of businesses that every business they start, you could say he has the Midas touch because his businesses are always successful, always running well, always profitable. So that is something that you can use in situations like in business, I'm thinking. I'll give you an example of that in a minute, but let me tell you that this originated from the Greek myth about Midas, who basically Midas wished for everything he touched to turn to gold. And unfortunately, everything he touched did turn to gold because he wasn't thinking it through, like his child and his rivers and his food and all that turned to gold. And what good is that? You cannot enjoy it if it's gold and it's frozen. So, but the term stuck about the Midas's touch, turning things into gold, turning things profitable. Bill, do you have any examples of the Midas touch?
Instead of an example, something that's interesting to me about this one is the original story was don't be greedy, right? because if you touch everything and it becomes gold, you can't eat, you'll kill your loved ones. It was terrible, right? So it was don't be greedy. But actually, today it's good. If you say that someone has the Midas touch, it's actually good. As you said, Krista, it means that they are good at being successful, that they are good at making money. So the negatives of the story kind of fell away, and now it's something positive that you can say about someone.
Yeah. Yeah. The Midas touch. And you have the last one, Bill. What is that?
I do. And this is a kind of a negative one as well. Pandora's Box. So Pandora was one of the goddesses of Greek mythology. And there was this special box that essentially she was told not to open. And for reasons that are unclear to me, she did. And all of the evil things in the world were in this box. And when the box was opened, all of the evil things that we see today entered the world. Basically, this was their way to say, why does evil exist? Because it was contained in the box, and we humans, we let it out of the box. So, how has this come to be used today? If you do something and it leads to all kinds of bad consequences that you can't control, it is described as a Pandora's box. And I'll give you my quick example, and it's a bit unfortunate, but like wars in the Middle East, right? It's become quite common for countries in the last couple hundred years to go to do wars in the Middle East, but it never ends up with peace. We are constantly opening up a Pandora's box, and bad things seem to keep happening. So it's kind
Mm-hmm.
of a grim example, but we are
Mm-hmm.
talking about evil in the world. I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
Krista, if you have something a bit lighter for Pandora's box.
Well, pertaining to evil, it's what comes to mind for me is, say there is a man and he's walking in a hardware store and he turns around and he sees this beautiful woman and he's enthralled by her, and he's like thinking to himself, oh, well, I don't think my wife would like that too much. I don't want to open that Pandora's box, which means, it would only lead to bad things, only lead to evil things if he were to pursue that. So he cuts himself off and says, I'm leaving that Pandora's box. I know it would lead to evil and ill things in the long run. So I'm going to let that Pandora's box just go. So there's an
I
example.
I like that story. Boy, Krista, you come up with people with good character who resist these bad things.
Resist these
That's good.
things. Don't open
I
that
didn't
Pandora's box.
that's right. Well, and I saw an example for Pandora's Box again from a recent interview on CNN where they were talking about the coronavirus and whether it was being
Mm,
researched in a lab. And the
mhm,
analogy was used that doing this kind of research on viruses in a lab could
mhm,
be a Pandora's box.
good example.
um,
Yeah.
that it could open up many different
Mhm,
evils.
mhm,
And I'm not
yeah.
speaking to the truth or falsity of any of those things. I'm just saying it
Yeah.
was described as a Pandora's box.
Yeah. That's a good one. That's a good one. Well, I wanted to remind everybody to like, subscribe, and share this video if you found it helpful and interesting to people that are looking to learn English, that are non-natives trying to figure out some of these strange things such as Achilles heel or sour grapes or whatever the odd idiom or phrase is. Then please share this with them. And Bill, were you going to attempt a story with some of these phrases from the Greek origins?
So as we do with these stories, we try to make them up on the fly, right? We try to create on the fly, meaning right at the moment. We try to make up these stories right at the moment. So, how would I talk about this? I would say there were these two YouTubers who were making YouTube videos, uh, and they always had the Midas touch. Every YouTube video they made was successful and great. Uh, but they had an Achilles heel, and his name was Bill. And as soon as
No.
Bill got, and as soon as Bill got on there, oh boy, then things started to slide. But here, let me. But maybe that's just all sour grapes, right? Maybe it's not that bad, and things will be fine. And we'll have the Midas touch again. Um,
And I will not say that when Bill
how's that?
comes on, it's like the Pandora's box. Oh boy. That is
Yes.
not true.
Don't put me in front of a camera. That could be a Pandora's box.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That is true. That is a good one.
Uh,
All right. Well, I'm going to let you win that round
Oh,
because I can't beat that.
okay.
So, but if you can, and you think of a good story using some of these idioms and Greek uh, derived phrases in English, then write us a little paragraph, send us a little story, and we'll select the best one. And the one who does will get a free English session with me. So be sure to write it in the comments that your little story. So, and Bill, you have a fabulous newsletter, which happens to be free. Tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. And first, I just want to encourage everyone, a free session with Krista. That's something worth doing. So get busy in the comments down there. But yes, if you are looking for a weekly newsletter on things like this, idioms and sayings and cultural references about English, head to winningenglish.substack.com. I do a weekly newsletter, video, and podcast, if you just want the audio, where I discuss these sorts of things. So please check it out. Subscribe if you wouldn't mind. It just takes your email address. And like you said, Krista, I do that for free. So I'm just looking for you to support that project at this time by signing up.
That is from the good of your heart. I love that, Bill. All right. And these are for the good of our hearts too, to bring these idioms, slangs, and phrases to you. We hope that you will continue to enjoy them. And thank you for joining us for the best minutes of your day with Bill and Krista of ooLango and Winning English. Have a good one.
Take care.
Bye.